Kamei Barabine, or is it Machlokus? How do we paskin by Misa de Shemayim by Kamei Barabine? Do we say Kamei Barabine by me the or is it Machlokus or what? Or we actually talk?
We had that yesterday.
So how do we paskin? Because Machlokus, no?
There's a machlokas in the Gemara of Nechunya ben Akana held that we treat Yom Kippur like Shabbos, right? And even though Yom Kippur is the Kores, you want to know how we paskin regarding that? I'm not sure they brought up Psak Halacha here. That, by the way, that sugya is in Krisus.
Krisus, okay, look it up.
But the Chachamim argue with Rav Nechunya ben Akana and say that no, it's only when you have mamish corporal punishment like Mises Bezdin and Malchus.
Right, that's what.
But the issue of Kores, that's we're going to have it tonight as well.
I know, but I know right. I see by Mila.
By Meila, well, we're going to have it's going to come up again. Okay, we're on Lamed Gimel, 33. So who is the one that says he's b'mila b'misa Rebbe? That even if you're mazid b'mi'ilah by benefiting from Hegdish, that it's b'misas b'dei shamayim, it's Rebbe D'Tanya. He's it b'mi'ilah, Rebbe oimer b'misa. That if you're mazid by mi'ilah, you get misa b'dei shamayim. No, only Bahazara, only it's a lav. My time at the Rebbe, Amravavo, Gomar chet mitruma. It's a gzeira shava because it says by truma v'chata bishkaga. By Gomar chet mitruma. Matruma b'misa. If a zar non-kohen eats truma, it's misa b'dei shamayim. Af mi'ila b'misa. So mi'ila is the same thing. And therefore umina. We're going to continue deriving from that hekesh. Matruma is bekazayis. There's a minimum shear that gives you the triggers the punishment. It's got to be at least a kazayis. Af me'ila bekazayis. Remember yesterday we learned it could be maybe not if it's shava prut, even if it's less than a kazayis. So Rebbe says no, it's got to be a kazayis. Maskin Rav Papa mimayde Rebbe karabanan svir lahu. How do you know that Rebbe holds like the Rabbanon regarding this issue of that you have to have at least a kazayas? Maybe Rebbe will hold you even less kazayas. Dil makaber shol svirle. The Amar yesh bo shava prut avol pi the less kazayas. Remember we brought that yesterday. That Abba Shol said that as long as it's worth a shava prut, even it could be less than kazayas. Rav Papa who dam Abba Shul tarti boy, but that can't be. Because Rav Papa was the one who said yesterday as well that Abba Shol requires both aspects. It's got to be Shava Pruta and a Kazayas. It can't be less. So it's clear, Elishmami no Hadar Bey, that Rav Papa went back on what he said before. Marbraid of Rav the Amar, Hochni Kamar. Lo Imamit Bashar Mitzvahs, by other Averis, like Shabbos, Shelo Asabehen Shein Miskaven Kimiskaven, where it's not the same if you have Kavona versus not Kavona. For example, Shein Miskaven Lachtoch Esat Tolush. You want to use a knife on Shabbos and cut a carrot that's been pulled from the ground. So there's no Isser, but Chotach Esam Chuber. But you thought you were cutting something tolish and you cut something that's mechuber. So you lack meleches machsheves. You didn't carry out a meleches machsheves, that which you wanted to do. Shapater, toimer b'me'ilah, sheniskaven nischaven begizei cholim nischaven begizei oila. You wanted to warm yourself with with wool of chulin, but you did it of an ola, shemoal, so you can't compare the cases of shar. Remember, we talked about over there, you don't bring a chatas. Over here, we want to say you don't bring an osham. You can't learn it because meila is different. Because by the other averis, you see you need a certain kavanah. By meila, you don't need it. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak learns also, hachi kamar. Lo imaret b'shar mitzvah shkim lo mischai b'hem shem misasek imisasek. By Shabbos, there's something called a misasek. She'im niskaven lagbias atolush. Your kavanah is to pick up a carrot, not to cut it. Pick it up. The chotach is amachur, and then you cut something that's called misasek. That's not even a melechas machshavas. You're doing something, you're occupied in something else without even thought. You do something else. Shapoter, toimer b'miila shemoishik yodel leklili tol chayfetz. You stretched out your hand to get a cup of coffee. And meanwhile, sachyadu b'shemen shel kodesh, you ended up anointing your hand with holy shemen, shemal. So you see, you can't learn the dinim of when do you bring a chatas by the other averis as to when you bring the osham by me'il. Omar Mar. Amedvar mamurim. When did we said before that if you separate truma on Pesach, it doesn't become, and it's chametz, so it doesn't have kedushas truma. So says the Gemara by Medvarmum b'mafresh truma vechmitza. Let's say you were mafresh truma, and then it became chametz. Aval hifrish chametz truma. But if mamish you went to mamish chametz during Pesach and you separated truma from it, it doesn't work. Divrat kol ein kedusha. That which you separate does not become truma. Not immediately. How do you know that if you're going to be mamish chametz, it doesn't have a shem chalos truma? Arav Nachbar Yitzchak Amar Kra titain lo v'lo leuro. When you mafresh truma, you have to be able to give it to the kohen, and it's roy for him to use. If you give it to him and for him to only throw away and burn, that doesn't become truma. So Masrav Rav Rav Yeshua ain't tormim atmela tohira. You have produce, right? You have to give 1/50 of the produce as truma, and you try to separate grain that is tameh to purify the tevel which is tahor. So you can't do it lechatchila. However, in Toran b'shoigeg, you didn't know, and you were toirimit truma so truma. There's a shem chalos on the truma, but based the Gemara of Amai. Why should that be based on what you just said? Why don't we say there also shouldn't be a good truma because lema lo? What can you do with truma tmeya? You can only burn it. So you're violating lo v'lo leuro. Or answers like kasha hosam haisaloshasa kosher. That it wasn't the truma tmeya was originally tohor, became tameh. So it had a period of time that was kosher. But here, we're talking about chametz on Pesach that never had a shasa kosher. How does that work? We're talking about the stalks in the ground got wet and became chametz while in the ground. So when you plucked it, it was already chametz. It's not like you plucked it and became chametz. It was chametz from the get-go. Because you can't give truma from something connected to the ground. So it has to be something that became chametz while it was connected to the ground.
How could it be chametz in the ground, though?
It can become a chametz in the ground. It can become. It gets wet. It's very ripe, and water falls on it, and it becomes chametz. That's why you have a concept of shmura. That's why you have shmura matzah. Even you have to be shomer it even in the field, because the grain can become chametz We're talking about
How can that be? It rains. It rains. You mean
Yeah, but-
all year?
But Kenny,
Utah.
Chazal say, or the Meforshim explain, that when the grain is extremely ripe and it's been left in the ground and then it becomes wet, then it can become chametz. In the regular, normally you would have harvested it. So they don't let it by shmura matzah. They watch it and they make sure that they harvest it before all of that, before it's roy to become chametz by rain. But when it rains on wheat that is, shlish or chatzi, or, as it's ripening, then yes, in a chanami, it can't become chametz, but it reaches a point where it can.
Is it like we say, just like if it's finished, it's like tolish, yeah?
No, it's not. No, but I'm talking about the mitzias. It can become leavened when it's ripe, even though it's still on the ground. That's how the Meforshim explain what we could go into Achmetz b'mechuber. It obviously the Gemara felt that grain, it can happen to grain even in the mechuber, but I saw the Meforshim explain it's when it's very ripe. And the main thing is you can't call it, you can't separate truma while it's on the ground. So that's why you have to explain that it happened before you plucked it. And that explains how you have a period where it's never had a shasa kosher, where it was never okay. So what are you going to say? That if you separated it became chametz, and then you gave truma, it's going to become, it can have a shame truma, but it can have a shasa kosher? Omer le'in, yes, correct. B'gzeiras irin pisgam of Maimar Kaddish and Shalta. Yeah, I answered this, and the angels answered me. I'm correct. That refers to the Talmidei Chachamim, and the people of the Beis HaMedrash said the halacha is like me. That the only time you give truma, it's not kedusha. That's b'mechuber. But if it's already been taken off the ground and became chametz, technically it would have a shame truma. And they paskin that way. Rav Yoshua, Omar Akra, a different reason. Rashis. Truma is called Rashis. Sheshiareni Koran Yisrael. Truma has to be something that the produce that you haven't have truma taken is tevel. You cannot eat it. So I separate truma, 1/50th. Now the remainder, the shirayim, the Jews can eat. It's not tevel anymore. It's been misakein through the truma. However, chametz on Pesach, if the grain was chametz and I separate truma, there's no differential between the truma didn't accomplish anything. I'm still not allowed to eat it for a different reason because it's chametz b'Pesach. But it's got to undergo that change. Shashir and Ikorin Yisrael. Yatzazu shein shir and Ikorin. On chametz, you can't see a difference because you can't eat it. It's osur b'achila. So those are the two reasons why there's no shem chalois truma on the truma if chametz b'Pesach. Yosef Ravacha barav Avya kamed Rav Chizda. Ravacha was sitting in front of Rav Chizda. Yosef Amar Shmeid Rav Yechtam. They were saying the name of Rav Yechtam. Anovim shenitmu. You have grapes. Maybe a sheretz touched the outside of the grape. So you know what? Dorchen pachos mochos b'kabeitz of yenan kosher l'nesachim. You can press the grapes. Normally you press a huge vat. Think about the famous Lucy show where she's dancing on the grapes there. We're dating ourselves, those of us who remember that. But the Gemara is giving us an eitzah that just press a small amount, less than a kibetza. Remember, food less than a kibetza cannot acquire tumah. So step on it less and less a kibetza. The juice that comes out of it, the yayin that comes out of it, will be kosher even to pour nisuch hayayin on the mizbeach. Now, al maksavar, based on that, there are two ways of looking at the fluid within a grape. Based on this, what we just said, mashkin mifkid pkidi. The first approach more is that the juice in a grape is like a juice sitting in a cup. But it's not in a cup, it's in the grape juice. It's surrounded by grape skin. But it's not like part of the oichel. It's separate. There's a skin and the fluid inside of it. That's why, since the tumah, it never gets tumah if something touched it, because less than the kabetz, so the fluid inside remains tohor. Because le'emes kametami, if you hold mishkin mifkid pkidi, the only way the fluid can be metami is l'chisachet lehu, after you squeeze it out. But by squeezing it out, there's less than the kabetza. You have less than the shear, so that's why the fluid doesn't become tummy. You can use it for yayin nesach on the mizbech. So iyachi kabetza nami. So why do you have to squeeze less than a kabetza? You could have said squeeze a kabetza. The hatnan tummy mace, somebody who's contaminated with tumas mace, shesachat, who squeezed zaysim olives vanovim, if it's exactly kabetza mechuvenes tohorim, because once the fluid comes, you have less than a kabetza once you squeeze some of the fluid out. So you don't have to be less than kabetza; it could be even exactly a kabetza. So the Gemara says, but that's only di'evet. We don't want you to be di'evet because maybe you'll end up with a little more than a kabetza. L'chadchila, you should start off less. Gzeira dil maser lemevid yoyser miketz. Mikra din, the Gemara concedes that you could do it kabetza as well, but it's just a gzeira. Amalei Rav Chizda man sayis lachol Rabbi Yochanan Rabcha. Who told you that this is correct? I mean, how did you get rid of the tumah? Alma, that guy ksavar mashkin mivla bli. He doesn't hold that the fluid in a grape is like liquid contained by the grape skin. No, the fluid is completely absorbed in the oichel. If you touch the oichel, then the fluid became tummy as well. The kiven de itmule oichle itmule mashkin. And therefore, if it's a kabetza, it's not going to work because and therefore there's no eitzah to do it pachas. Amr lei, the atloi tizra demashkin mifkin pkidi. What do you mean? How can you hold that the fluid is considered absorbed, and you don't hold that it's considered as if the fluid is surrounded by the grape skin? V'hat nan. What about the case we just quoted? You said that if somebody who's a tumas mace touches olives or grapes, exactly a kabetza, they tore. Now I understand. That only works the Amrit Bishma Mifkid Kidi if you hold the grape skin is on the outside, the fluid's on the inside, and once Mishum Hachi Tohar, because once you squeeze it out, then it's less than kabetza and there's no tumah. El Yamrit Mivla Bli. But if you're going to tell me the fluid is absorbed within the whole grape, and a tumas mace touched it, amai tohorin. Once he touched the grape, he made everything tummy, including the fluid there. You know what? That case over there by the tumas mace, you know why it was tahor? Because it had never had fluid that touched it, so therefore there was no hechsher lekabel tumah. So the tummy mace tied a grape was dry, and that it didn't become tummy. There was no hechsher lekabel tumah. Because lamus miskari, when did fluid touch it? L'chisachet luhu. You had to squeeze the grape to get the fluid out of it. L'chisachet luhu batlu shiura. Once you squeeze it, it's less than the shear of the kabetza because you had an exact kabetza. And that's the answer. So, and the ilote mahachi, you have to learn that way because haditanya. What is this compared to? The trumas tutim zeisim vanovim. You have cherries or olives or grapes. shenitma that became tamei, she'en lo balo heter achila v'lo heter asaka. We said you can't eat it and you can't burn it because you're a non-Kohen. But haheter achila nami ispe. But based on the way you're learning, there would be a heter achila. The e-boy, even though it's potentially tama'ibol, we said darklu pachos mikabetza. You could go ahead and be and squeeze it less than a kabetza, it will remain torn, and the coin could eat it. Technically, you're correct, but we don't allow you to do it because you're going to keep it around. You're going to end up eating the grapes, which is tamei, and that you're not allowed to do. Are we worried about that? Vatanya, madlikin the pasul v'shemen shel truma shenitmeis. The Kohen is allowed to burn shemen of truma that is tamei. How come we're not concerned that he's going to eat it? How come we don't have the same gzeira? Amarle, two reasons. Pas zarek la ben ha'etzim. First of all, the bread is they throw it among the wood, so it becomes ma'us, so nobody's going to eat it. Shemen shel truma rabba lebelchimo. Same thing with shemen shel truma. They put it in an ugly old vessel that nobody's going to come eat it because it's disgusting. Okay, gufa. This halacha we just quoted. Madlikim impossible shemen shel truma shenitmeis. That a Kohen is allowed to burn pot bread or shemen that was truma that became tamei. You can use it for fire. That loy shanu la pas. It's got to be bread. Aval chite lo. But wheat kernels that became tamei, we don't allow it. There we are concerned that he might come and eat the dried wheat kernels, and it's hard to make them disgusting from eating, putting them somewhere mos, like bread. You throw bread in a corner with wood, it becomes mos, but the chitim are not. So you see, the gzeira applies by chitim. However, Rav Yechidam afilu chite, that no, even the wheat, there's no gzeira, because
we're not afraid he's going to use it.
the amai, why not? How does Rav Yochanan answer about the takola problem? Maybe he's going to come eat it. The Ravashi b'shmikoso umeista. You cooked it and then you threw it somewhere. It became disgusting. So therefore, there's no chashash you're going to come eat it. So it's the same svar like we said by the shemen or the bread. It becomes disgusting. So then there's no gzeira shema yovel l'dei takola. But otherwise, there would be a gzeira. Okay. So tomorrow we will learn at 9:00.